It was summer in Houston, and it was so hot you could almost fry an egg on the sidewalk. The tiny air conditioner in my office gave out 2 days earlier with a wheeze and a groan. Sweat dripped from my armpits as I sat at my desk, wishing I was at Joe's bar sipping a cold beer. But I couldn't leave. I was waiting for my appointment, a lady whose sultry voice I remembered well. Last time I heard her, she hung up without even giving me her name, saying her husband was missing. I heard the click of her high heels in the hallway and saw her shadow as she stopped to read the black lettering on the frosted glass of my door. Jack Stone, private investigator. I quickly buttoned the top button of my shirt and adjusted my tie as the door opened. I've seen a lot of beautiful women, but this one looked like she stepped straight out of a fashion magazine. I'm 62, and she looked only 4 or 5 inches shorter. Her long brunette hair was styled to perfection, framing a gorgeous face with high cheekbones and sparkling green eyes that could pierce a man's soul. The expensive suit she wore did little to hide her curves, and her long legs were accentuated by a short skirt. Standing up, I extended my hand as she crossed the room. "Jack Stone," I introduced myself. "Mrs. Miller," she replied, sitting down opposite me and crossing her long legs. "Anna Miller, and yes, my husband is the same John Miller who made a fool of you a few years ago." She was joking. Her husband had embezzled funds from his company, and his business partner couldn't prove it, so he hired me. I ran a sting on Miller, caught him with his hand in the cookie jar, and he was charged and went to court. Everyone thought he was convicted, but he hired a clever out-of-town lawyer who discredited me, and Miller got off. It was bad for my ego and worse for business. It took me over a year to come to terms with it. "I have to say, Mr. Stone, you are exactly what I imagined a private detective to be." "Oh? And what is that?" I asked. "Tall, well-built, a little intimidating. That nose looks like it's been broken more than once, and the scar above your left eye and the other on your cheek indicate you don't take any nonsense." I had to grin. She had me pegged well. "So, Mrs. Miller, how can I help you?" "I'm offering you the opportunity to balance the scales, Mr. Stone. Somehow John found out I was going to divorce him and left for parts unknown. He doesn't care about me, but divorce will cost him dearly financially, and he knows it." My ears perked up at the mention of money. "How long has he been gone?" "A little over a month." "Have you contacted the police?" "Yes, they made me file a missing person report, but they didn't seem too interested. Like me, they believe he's shacking up with his girlfriend. They showed me how to track his phone, but nothing's shown up. I know you don't take infidelity cases, but you do take missing persons cases. So here's my offer. It'll pay you $250,000 plus expenses to find my husband and a bonus of $60,000 if you find evidence of his infidelity. Do you suspect him of cheating?" "Oh, I know he's cheating. He has at least 2 mistresses, and I'm sure he's with one of them. I don't care who. I just want him found, so I can serve him the divorce papers." I pulled a contract from the bottom drawer of my desk and filled it out to reflect her offer. $250,000 to find her husband, another $60,000 if I got proof of infidelity, and a $5,000 retainer to start. She signed without reading it. "I don't have all $5,000 with me," she said, pulling money from her purse. "I'll have someone bring it to you tomorrow afternoon if that's okay." "I accept checks," I told her. "I want you to start now. I wouldn't want you to wait for the check to clear," she explained. I took $3,000 in cash and gave her a receipt, then spent the next hour asking questions. Did he have friends or relatives he could stay with? How much cash did he take? Did she know where he might have more money? Did he own property out of state? Did he drive his own car? She gave me his driver's license number, credit card, social security, and bank account numbers. But she suspected he had others she didn't know about. She knew nothing about his business dealings or his partners. I knew he was forced out of the company where he committed the theft, but I hadn't followed him after the trial. As Mrs. Miller left my office, I watched her walk away, noting her tight skirt didn't reveal any panty lines. I wondered if it was because of the heat, or if she was trying to use her charms to persuade me to take her case. Either way, I was going to serve him those papers myself just to see the look on that bastard's face. Without interrupting my work, I was also investigating our state's lieutenant governor, who was as crooked as they come. A couple of months ago, I received anonymous information about a real estate scheme he was involved in. A preliminary investigation convinced me the tip was legitimate. I hate dirty cops and politicians, but I had to be careful. This missing person case would allow me to focus on something else while my scent disappeared, if someone from the lieutenant governor's office was snooping around. Besides, I owed Miller for making a fool out of me. It was time to return the favor. I sat at my computer and started compiling a summary using the information Mrs. Miller gave me, but got nowhere. I knew it wouldn't be easy. He was smart. I made the mistake of underestimating him once and wasn't going to do it again. I needed a starting point, some kind of clue. It had been 2 years since I visited the office of Miller and Sanders Industrial Lighting. Now just Sanders Industrial Lighting. The secretary recognized me immediately when I walked in. "I know who you are, Mr. Stone, but I don't see your name on Mr. Sanders' appointment calendar, and frankly, I don't expect to see it there in the future." I wasn't surprised by her reception. "Just tell him I have a way to get back at our common enemy." She stared at me for a few seconds before saying, "Go sit over there. I'll see if he can talk to you." Not knowing how long I'd be kept waiting or if he would even see me, I sat down and reached for a magazine. I barely had time to open it when his office door opened. He stood there, frowning. "What's the matter, Stone? Did you come to return our money?" "No," I replied. "Most likely it's gone forever, but with your help we can take a little revenge." He turned and retreated to his office, leaving the door open. I took this as an invitation. Sitting down in a chair, I explained that Miller's wife had hired me to find him, and that I hoped to serve him the divorce papers myself. "When this happens, you can always say you helped," I told him. To my surprise, this brought a small smile to his face. "What do you want from me?" "Everything you know about his habits when he worked here, the people he knew, the places he went to get away, anything that might help me find him. Maybe a small hiding place where he took his women. His wife thinks he has a girlfriend, but doesn't know who." "Damn, guys like that go through mistresses like an alligator through a swamp," he said. "I know about 2 women he had fun with, but that was 2 years ago. Who knows how many he's had since then?" "Anything you can think of," I repeated. "An old girlfriend might know his new one. You know what they say about a woman scorned." He reached for the intercom. "Diane, can you come in here for a minute?" A few seconds later, Sanders' pretty secretary stood at his desk, smiling. "Diane, you interacted more with the 2 women Miller dated than I did. Do you remember their names?" "I have their names, addresses, and phone numbers. Mr. Sanders, he asked me to send them flowers. I have their info on my computer. He also had me dial their numbers for him." "Great," I said. "What about a secret love nest?" "Sorry, I don't know of any," she replied. "Diane, print out everything you have on these 2 women and anything else you think might help find Miller. He's missing, and we're going to help Mr. Stone find him," Sanders said. She looked at her boss with an expression that said, "IVDJTML do it, but I don't like it." She turned and walked back to her desk. Sanders turned back to me. "Leave her your card in case she thinks of anything else. I'm only doing this because I want to see Miller suffer." I stood up, didn't shake hands, and joined Diane at her desk. She handed me a printout. "This is all I have." I pulled out my business card. "Your boss said I should give this to you in case you find anything else." I felt good. At least I had a lead, maybe 2. As I left the air-conditioned building, the heat outside hit me like a blast furnace. I considered stopping by Joe's bar, but got an uneasy feeling I was being watched. If 20 years as a PI had taught me anything, it was never to ignore intuition. Lighting up a cigarette, I looked around carefully. I didn't see any suspicious characters, but I couldn't shake the feeling. The last thing I wanted was to lead them straight to my leads. I returned to my office, took off my jacket and shoulder holster, placed my Beretta in the top drawer of my desk, and grabbed a bottle of Dewar's White Label in a glass. I needed to think. I had two cases, Miller and the lieutenant governor. Then it dawned on me. Of course, if I were hiding from someone, I'd want to know what they were doing to find me. Miller was keeping an eye on his wife, staying a step ahead of her. Damn, he was smart. I looked around my office. Could he have bugged it while I was away? At that moment, I decided that paranoia was my friend. I put everything back on, left my glass on the table, and went around the corner to a small diner for a bite to eat. When I finished, I walked into the back room past the men's room sign and out the back door, returning to my car. I drove to a little-known electronics store. Angelo, or Angie for short, has always been my ace in the hole. He heard the little bell above the door as I entered and came out to greet me. "Hey Jack, what's wrong?" "Hey Angie, ever feel like you're being watched?" He laughed. "Not in my business." I took out my phone and placed it on the counter. "Could you scan this for me? I think I'm being followed and my office might be bugged." Angie connected my phone to his computer and checked it. "Phone's clean, Jack." "Good news," I told myself. "Can you scan my office?" "Sure," he said, looking at the clock. "I can leave here in an hour." "Great, thanks." It wasn't the first time he checked my office for bugs. We had a routine. He'd come by to say hello, carry on a normal conversation while scanning the room, and if he found a bug, we wouldn't to alert whoever planted it. Of course, he found one 15 minutes later, professionally installed in the rail of my Venetian blinds. Whoever Miller hired was no amateur. We left the bug in place. "Come on, Angie, I'll take you downstairs," I said, ensuring our spy would believe we were talking about something else. Once out of range of the listening device, I called Mrs. Miller. She answered on the third ring. "Hello, Mrs. Miller, I have good news and bad news." "Tell me the good news first," she said. "I have two promising leads." "And the bad news?" "Your husband is watching you." "What? How do you know?" "Sometimes a PI develops a sixth sense. Mine told me I was being followed today. On a whim, I checked my office and found a bug." "How do you know it's John?" "Think about it. What better way to prevent you from finding him than to know your every move?" "That's sneaky," she growled. "Your husband is no fool. Either way, we can use this to our advantage." I explained my plan, but it was already late, so we decided to wait until the next day. At 10 o'clock the next morning, she burst into my office. "Why didn't you tell me you were the same PI who created all the problems a few years ago?" she shouted. I calmly handed her a phone with a note saying she should use it in the future if she needed to call me. She nodded, understood, and placed the rest of the fee on my desk. "If I had known who you were, I would never have hired you." "Well, I'm going to fix that right now," she declared. "Wait a minute," I begged, but she turned and walked out, slamming the door behind her. "Damn," I said out loud, leaning back with a big smile. I didn't like Miller, but I knew her plan would work. She'd waste his time, flash her pretty eyes, and leave him wondering. Whoever was following her would think she fired me and hired him, leaving me alone. I still needed to give her time to ensure my plan worked, so I ran some errands and then stopped by Joe's for a couple of drinks. Stan, my favorite bartender, saw me walk in and had a frosty mug ready by the time I sat down. We'd known each other a long time. He even dated my ex-wife for a while. We chatted for a bit before he got back to work. A common cry in my profession is, "Follow the money." Unfortunately, I tried this 2 years ago and got nowhere. Miller was a master at hiding funds. Everyone has a weakness, and Miller's was women. Instead of chasing money, I decided to look for broken hearts. 40 minutes later, I found myself ringing Janet Stenson's doorbell. The door opened, revealing a stunning redhead with sparkling blue eyes. The black dress she wore showed off a figure that could rival any supermodel. "Hi, Janet. Can I come in?" "Yes, of course. Come in," she replied, standing aside to let me in. The apartment was upscale, with expensive furniture and tasteful decor. I could tell she had upgraded her lifestyle since moving here. "Nice place," I commented, taking in my surroundings. "Thank you," she replied sharply. "So what can I do for you, Mr. Stone?" I glanced at the leather sofa. "May I sit?" She sighed impatiently. "Sure." I sat down on the sofa and noticed her phone on the coffee table. what I wouldn't give to look at it, but I couldn't figure out how to get her out of the room long enough. Janet, Arthur Richardson is missing. His wife is worried sick and hired me to find him. Can I offer you a beer? She interrupted, surprising me. This threw me off a bit. She needed time to think about her strategy, or maybe she thought the beer would loosen my tongue. Either way, it gave me an opportunity. That would be great, thanks, I replied. As soon as she disappeared into the kitchen, I took out the recorder from my pocket, turned it on, and stuck it under the sofa. It was voice-controlled and only recorded when someone was speaking. I hoped she would call Miller as soon as I left. She quickly returned with a beer, placing a leather coaster on the glass coffee table in front of me and the bottle on it. I don't know how I can help, Mr. Stone. Art was my friend, but I haven't seen him in years. His wife must be furious. Do you have any leads? Not yet. I was hoping you could help me. Let me be honest, Janet, you were much more than just a friend. With all his money, I doubt a man like Richardson would risk using hotel rooms. I think he has a nice little hideout somewhere. If he's not there, it may indicate foul play. And what will happen if you find him? His wife isn't a fool, Janet. If he's with someone, she just wants to make sure he's okay. Yeah, she said, letting me know she knew I was lying. Tell me, Mr. Stone, why did she hire you? There are probably 100 PIs in Houston. Even though your boyfriend's expensive lawyer got him off, I actually got information on him. I'm good at my job. I think Mrs. Richardson understands that. I understand, she admitted. I wish I could help, but like I said, I haven't seen Art in years and we've never been to any kind of love nest together. I was surprised that the mistress of a man like Miller couldn't lie better. But I knew that was my cue. I took a sip of beer, stood up, and put my business card on the table. Well, if you think of something, I'll call you, she finished for me. She walked me to the door, said goodbye, and closed the door. I knew her next move would be to call Richardson. The phone I saw wasn't supposed to be in a luxury apartment. It was a cheap burner phone. When I first arrived and parked my car on the street, I noticed the apartment building had a parking lot on the lower level with a large roll-up gate. I saw one of the residents use the automatic garage door opener to enter. I'm willing to bet that in a stylish place like this, each resident has a designated parking space. All I had to do was get inside. I opened the trunk and took out Captain America's magic decoder ring. Okay, it wasn't a ring and had nothing to do with Captain America, but that's what I called it. It was about the size of a pack of cigarettes. Most houses in this area had good door locks. Not that I couldn't pick them, but it could take a long time. They also had built-in garages with automatic overhead door openers operating on radio frequencies. Most people rarely locked the attached door, so once they entered the garage, they could walk into the house. I bought my little gadget a few years ago at Angie's electronics store. All I had to do was press a button when someone used the garage door opener, and my little toy would recognize the frequency and duplicate it. After that, I could use it to move in and out of the garage at any time. All I had to do was wait outside Janet's house until one of the residents came home. It could have taken hours, but I was lucky. 10 minutes after I left her apartment, a BMW pulled up. When I pressed the button, I saw the red light turn on, indicating it was working. I waited a few minutes before going inside and closed the door behind me. I was right about the parking spaces. It only took me a minute to find Janet's. Jesus, I said out loud, seeing a Mercedes Cabriolet convertible. She must be something special in bed. Now all I had to do was find a place under the car with enough metal to hold the magnetic tracking device when driving over potholes. On a whim, I tried the door handle, and to my shock, it opened. Stupid woman, I muttered. I reached under the seat and attached the device to the inside of the frame. Once again, it was a waiting game. My tracking receiver would alert me as soon as Janet's car started moving. To avoid appearing suspicious, I drove around the block a few times before finding another parking spot and waiting again. Night had fallen, and I was beginning to think I'd have to spend the night in the car when I heard my radio start beeping. I pulled out to follow her and saw her taillights as she drove away. I followed her to a grocery store a few blocks from her house. Taking out my binoculars, I watched as she entered the building. She took a large cart, which I assumed meant she'd be there for a while. This was my opportunity to retrieve the recorder. I hurried back to the apartment building, used my magic decoder ring to enter through the garage, and took the elevator to the second floor. Household locks are not easy to pick, but the locks developers buy for apartment buildings are child's play. Taking a master key and torsion spring from my pocket, I found myself inside her apartment in less than 20 seconds. Without wasting time, I took out the recorder and quickly returned to the car. Several recordings were made, but most lasted only a few seconds. I figured she was talking to herself when she was alone. However, the first recording lasted just over 8 minutes. I knew it would only be one side of the conversation, but I hoped for a miracle, and almost got it. "Hello, it's me? Yes, this is very important. You'll never guess who was just here asking questions. Jack Stone. Yes, he said your wife hired him to find you because she's worried about you." "Yes, I know. I don't know, he doesn't seem like that kind of guy, but it's possible, I guess." "When?" "Okay. What should I bring?" "Well, I don't know. Is it even possible to cook on a yacht?" "I have no idea." "Okay, I'll go in the evening. I don't want to leave right now and risk he's still there. Of course, I'll make sure he doesn't follow me. I'll go at 3 o'clock in the morning. There will be fewer cars on the road, and I'll be able to tell if someone is following me." "What about the apartment, the car, all my things?" "Okay, I'll see you early Friday morning. I love you, honey." I didn't need Sherlock Holmes' powers of deduction to figure out they were running. I looked at my watch. It was 11 o'clock on a Wednesday evening. I had 28 hours to get everything ready, but at that moment, there was nothing else I could do. So I went home to get some sleep. The next morning, I called Mrs. Miller. "Hello, Mrs. Miller, this is Jack Stone. Could you please drop off the divorce papers at my office sometime today? If not, I can come and pick them up." "Have you found him yet?" she almost shouted. "I never assure clients until every I is dotted and T is crossed." "Not exactly," I told her. "But I have a very good lead. If everything works out, I'll be looking your future ex in the eyes tomorrow morning." "No one will give him these papers except me," she said. "No, this is not a good idea. First of all, I'm leaving around 2:30 in the morning. Secondly, I have no idea what your husband's reaction will be. He might have a gun. I don't know, but I don't want to worry about you or myself." "I don't care, that's why I hired you. Just don't forget to take your gun. I doubt he'll become aggressive. He'll be angry, but I don't think he'll actually try to do anything. Either way, I'll be there. I'm going to hand him these papers, looking him straight in the eyes." She spoke like a woman on a mission and wasn't going to be convinced otherwise. "Okay," I sighed. "But today at 2:30, you must be in my office. You can't be late." "I won't be late, Mr. Stone. I'll be there." I needed to make a couple more calls, but after that I had nothing else to do. I called Stacy to see if she was free for lunch. We met at Delilah's, a cute little restaurant a couple of blocks from where she worked. When I sat down at the table, she was quieter than usual. "Hello, beautiful. How's my girl doing?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, looking away. "What's the matter, baby? Having a bad day?" "I'll tell you after we order," she replied. We had already met there several times for lunch, so it didn't take long to order. The waitress wrote everything down in a notepad and left with the menus. A minute later, she returned with coffee and said our orders would be ready soon. "So, Stace, why so gloomy?" I asked. She took her coffee cup with both hands and stared at it for a few seconds. I got the impression that whatever the problem was, it was important. "Last night you made a comment. You said that if I weren't already your ex-wife, you'd propose to me." "Yes." "Have you ever really thought about it? About proposing again?" Her question took me by surprise. As the song says, we got married in a rush. Those days I was either on a mission or with Stacy. A friend introduced us, and that same night we wrecked a motel room. 4 months later we were saying I do in a Vegas wedding chapel, and a guy dressed like Elvis pronounced us husband and wife. We lived like that for almost a year before realizing my profession and marriage weren't the best combination. "Stacy, we tried that, remember? I'm still a private detective. I still have crazy hours. Damn, I'm leaving at 2:30 tonight to look for a missing person. I don't know where I'm going or how long I'll be gone." We're older now, Jack. More experienced. When we first got married, I wasn't ready. I knew what you did for a living, but I didn't know what it entailed. Now I know. After our divorce, I dated a lot of guys, but never found anyone who could take your place. I can't get you out of my head." I was stunned and had no idea what to say. She picked up her cup and took a sip, still holding it in both hands. "Well, what do you think? You have to tell me you still love me." "The truth is, Stacy, I still love you. It's because I love you that I think this is a bad idea. Do you really think you won't worry when I'm away on business? You don't think you'll torment yourself with constant questions about where I am and if I'm okay?" She looked up at me. "I have a friend at work whose husband is a firefighter. They've been married for 20 years. She told me how she copes. If she can handle it, then I can handle it, Jack." Just then, our food arrived. The thought of being married to Stacy again wasn't unappealing, but I was sincerely hesitant. "I need to think, Stace. Give me some time," I said. She looked down again with a sad smile as if she knew my answer would be no. "No pressure, Jack. I just thought it was worth mentioning." This put a bit of a damper on the rest of our lunch. As I said goodbye, I kissed her on the lips and told her I'd think about her words. This seemed to cheer her up a little. I went back to my office and went through my to-do list again. I needed to make another confirmation call, but decided to wait until late in the evening. In the end, I decided to go home and try to get some sleep. This was my only chance. Unfortunately, Stacy's proposal kept playing in my head like a song I couldn't stop thinking about. Around 8 o'clock, I gave up. "I'm already hungry," I said to myself. After making coffee, I put a frozen dinner in the microwave. I switched the TV to the menu and saw that the classic channel was showing several episodes of Mike Hammer back to back. By the time Mike ran out of cases to solve, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I jumped in the car and headed to the office. I needed to make one more call. "Is everything ready?" "Great. See you at the party. Thank you." I double-checked that I had everything I needed, then sat back and waited for my client. She showed up 10 minutes early, holding a manila envelope. After briefly telling her our plan, she asked if I had my gun on me. I assured her I'd never leave the house without it. At 2:30, we were sitting outside Janet's house. I reached into the trunk, took out my homemade bracket, and secured it to the center console. Then I opened my laptop and snapped it onto the bracket. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Well, track her. I have a program that works with the transmitter I installed in her car. Well, let her get a couple of miles ahead before we start following her. She'll never know we're behind her." "God, I'm impressed. It's like him riding with James Bond," Mrs. Miller said with a slight grin. "Not really," I replied. "Bond's tracking device had a limited range. It's powered by satellites. Our unsuspecting prey could make it all the way to Montana and we'd never lose her." "Just in time," I said as the large garage door opened. We watched the silver cabriolet drive out. I checked my laptop screen and saw the tracking device had picked her up on Main Street heading north. As Sherlock would say, "The game's afoot, Mrs. Miller." I watched her turn left onto Elm Street before we pulled out. When she got onto northbound I-45, I knew we were in for a ride. It was a little after 5 o'clock when we pulled into Rockport. I saw she had stopped, most likely to use the restroom. We did the same. I bought us both coffee, and when we got back in the car, I saw Janet was on the road again. We were driving on a 4-lane country road, so we had to be careful not to get too close. We drove for about 20 minutes before seeing another car. By this time, we had almost reached the Louisiana border. Just before the crossing, Janet turned left onto a 2-lane asphalt road. She drove a short distance, made another turn, and stopped. "We're there," I said. "Where?" "I don't see anything but trees." "There's a small lake ahead." She stopped at 3,589 Lake Drive. "It's right by the lake." "Well, come on, let's get this over with." We drove a little further until we spotted Janet's car. Having stopped, I turned off the engine so they wouldn't hear us. We approached the cottage. I put my ear to the door and heard a man's voice. Slowly, I tried the door handle. It was open. Nodding to my companion, we rushed inside. Janet screamed, and I thought Richardson was going to soil himself. He looked angrily at his girlfriend. "You brought them straight to me!" he shouted. She was at a loss, her mouth moving but no words coming out. The level of terror seemed out of proportion to the situation. "Here!" Mrs. Miller, soon-to-be ex, shouted, throwing the envelope on the table in front of her husband. I watched to make sure Richardson didn't try anything and paid no attention to the contents of the envelope. As he took out the papers, I noticed they were just blank sheets. Mrs. Miller reached into her purse and pulled out a chrome-plated .38 caliber revolver. The next moment it was aimed at me. "Now very carefully, Jack, draw your gun using only 2 fingers." My first thought was to wonder if a stylish lady like her knew how to use such a weapon. As I slowly reached for my pistol, I was about to decide to lunge at her when suddenly Eric Wilson, Lieutenant Governor of Texas, entered the room. He had a mischievous grin on his face as he approached Mrs. Miller. "I'll take it, honey," he said, taking the gun from her. I had no choice but to pull my Beretta from my shoulder holster and hold it with 2 fingers. "Now place it carefully and calmly on the floor, then step back," Wilson ordered. I did as I was told, surprised at how things were unfolding. "These tracking devices are very convenient, aren't they? I had one in your car the whole time. You found the bug I installed in your office but didn't check your car," Wilson taunted. "You found those numbers. I probably wouldn't have guessed," I said, looking at Carla. "Remember, I tried hard to find the money your husband embezzled and found nothing. I knew someone who was good at hiding money would have no problem hiding it from the divorce court. He'd convince the judge he was broke, and you'd get nothing. I also thought it was strange you didn't want to give me a check for my fee. Not many women feel safe walking around with that much cash in their wallet. Then I found out you lied to me. You said you went to the police and filed a missing persons report, but when I called to see if they were actively investigating, I was told there was no report. When I put everything together, it didn't smell right. I didn't fully understand it, but I felt something was wrong when you said only you could give hubby these papers. I realized everything would become clear when we got here." "You," I said, turning to Eric, "weren't the only one watching us." By the time I finished my little speech, Rayon had handcuffed the 2 criminals. "Are you going to be okay?" he asked. "Yeah, I'll be fine," I replied as he handed me back my gun and put the other one in an evidence bag. "I need a full recorded statement from you as soon as possible." "I'll come tomorrow," I answered. We watched as the police put Wilson and Carla into separate cars and drove away. "I need a drink," Richardson announced. "How about you, Jack?" "Yes, I could use some whiskey. Neat?" He looked at Janet, who was sitting at the small kitchen table. "You?" Without saying a word, she simply looked up at him. Her hands were shaking and there were tears in her eyes. Richardson rushed to her side, knelt next to her and hugged her. "Honey, everything's fine, he said, trying to console her. "I thought we were going to die," she sobbed. "I really thought we were all going to die." While Richardson comforted her, I went to where he kept the drinks and poured 3 whiskeys. "Here," I said, placing 2 of them on the table. It took a couple of hard drinks and almost an hour of soothing and coaxing from her boyfriend before Janet could speak again. When she finally did, her words made a lot of sense, at least to me. "We owe you our lives, Mr. Stone. I don't know how we can thank you enough." This didn't sit well with Richardson. "Janet, he brought them straight to us." "Damn it, Art. They would have found us sooner or later anyway. You know when Carla found those accounts, you were dead. She couldn't take the money from them if you were alive, but as your widow, she had legal access." At that moment, her face lit up with a smile. "Honey, I know how we can repay Jack for saving our lives. Return the money you embezzled from your old company." "What?" Richardson shouted. "No way." "Honey, Art, you told me you're worth about $9 million, was it true?" "Yes, but how many did you steal?" I intervened. $4 million. She looked genuinely shocked. $4 million, she gasped, looking at Richardson. "Art, I'm not going to live on stolen money. 4 out of 9 leaves $5 million. That's more than we could spend in 2 lifetimes. "Honey, there was a reason I embezzled the money," Richardson pleaded. "I don't care," she replied. "It was wrong. It was illegal. I want you to return the money." "How will returning the money help him?" Richardson asked. "It will restore his credibility," she replied. I added, "Not to mention the 10% search reward he'll get." "You see," she grinned, "if you love me as much as you say, then you'll return it." Richardson was apparently as good at talking to the ladies as he was at hiding money. I knew it would snow in hell before he handed over the money, so I left them there to argue and headed home. Tired, hungry, and planning to spend the next hours on the road, I stopped at a quaint little country diner for breakfast before starting the long drive back. On the way, all I could think about was Stacy's suggestion to try again. Being single was a double-edged sword. On one hand, I had complete freedom to go where I needed to and do what I needed to do. I didn't have to tell anyone anything or worry about checking in. On the other hand, coming home to an empty apartment and having dinner with the TV wasn't the high life. I remembered when Stacy and I got married. It wasn't all fights. We had good times, really good times. I kept going back and forth in my mind. I'd never tell anyone, but I cried when we divorced. Maybe we could find a compromise. It was a little after 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I returned to my office. I was tired and irritated. Not only did I miss out on a $60,000 bonus, but I didn't get paid at all. The only upside was that the story would end up in the newspapers, which would be good for business. Taking a manila envelope from my desk drawer, I wrote "The Miller-Wilson case" on the front, then put in my mileage records and some receipts for my accountant. Then I went to my email and typed Miller's name into the search engine. Wilson wasn't lying. There were 2 backdated letters he was talking about. I checked my file cabinet and, as stated, both copies of the receipts I gave Carla and the contract she signed were gone. I called the lieutenant and told him what I found. I asked if I could just take a screenshot of the email, but he told me not to do anything until he sent a computer forensics expert to look at it. He said it would take a couple of hours, which meant I had to wait. Just what I wanted to hear. By the time the expert came and left, it was closer to 6 o'clock. On the way home, I stopped at a cafe and immediately went to bed as soon as I entered my apartment. The next morning, I woke up to the phone ringing. When I picked it up to answer, I saw I had missed several more calls. "Hello," I said groggily. "Mr. Stone, this is Eloise Downing from the Houston Chronicle. I'm waiting outside your office. Are you coming soon?" "What's the matter, Miss Downing?" "I want to interview you about your role in the arrest of Eric Wilson," she told me. Okay. Everything was coming back into focus. I assumed the calls I missed were also from reporters. I looked at my watch. It was 9:20, and I hadn't even showered. I still had to go to the police station and give a statement. It was going to be a busy day. I asked Eloise to drop her card in the mailbox at my door and that I'd call her when I had some free time. After taking a shower, I had toast and coffee for breakfast. I was at the 1st District Police Station a little before 11. "What is this?" asked Lieutenant Rayon as I handed him an envelope 2 inches thick. "Wilson didn't choose me out of nowhere, Dan. For the past 6 months, I've been investigating his case on my own. I don't have hard evidence yet, but he was laundering millions for someone. He also has his hand in the cookie jar enough to bring charges of theft, embezzlement, and possibly racketeering. That's almost all. But I've wasted enough time and money on this case. It's yours," I told him. "Thanks a lot," he replied sarcastically, as if we didn't have enough to worry about. We entered the interrogation room where a videographer had already been set up. There was also a tape recorder on the table. After 2 hours of testimony, Rayon and I went to lunch. I'd known him since he was a rookie cop, and I was still working for a security company. By the time I got back to the office, it was already 3 o'clock, and I was thinking about calling Eloise back. I could always use free advertising, either that or go to Joe's. I was still trying to decide when I heard my door open. Looking up, I thought it was another reporter. Not much surprises me anymore, but this definitely did. I wasn't sure whether I should take out my gun or not. "Richardson, what are you doing here?" Without saying a word, he sank into a chair and tossed a letter-sized envelope onto my desk. "What is this?" 2 cashier's checks. The first for $3,600,000 issued to my former company. The second is your 10% search fee, he said. Janet was worried Walker would cheat you, so she insisted on 2 checks. I couldn't believe it. What kind of joke is this? No joke. What can I say? I love this woman. Sorry for saying this, but you don't look like the type who could fall in love with someone worth $4 million. Yes, well, you see, you don't know me as well as you think. I created this company, Stone, using only my blood, sweat, and tears. And I made damn good money. I was proud of what I achieved. When I met Carla, I was on top of the world. She was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, and she was crazy about me, or so I thought. Anyway, after a year of marriage, I couldn't believe how much money she had lost. I should have put an end to it, but I didn't want to risk losing her. So instead, I thought about expanding the business. I met Walker at a party. We got to talking, and he offered me the money needed to develop the company. He was supposed to be a silent partner, but the next moment, I discovered his office was next to mine. He began taking part in business and strategy meetings. We suddenly started doing business with shady companies and changing suppliers. He and I constantly quarreled. One day, looking around, I saw he had built his own small empire based on my company. The only reason he kept me around was because of my name, and I knew that wouldn't last forever. Walker is a snake, and I understood perfectly well that they were going to cheat me. So I started putting together my own golden parachute. It only took me a year to lose these $4 million. My biggest mistake was underestimating you. You caught me red-handed, but I knew you'd never find the money. How Carla found those numbers, I have no idea. It had to be some stupid accident. And Janet? How did she get involved in all this? She was my savior. I met her about 4 years ago. By that time, I already knew my marriage was a complete sham. Carla was running around with a dozen different men. I would have divorced her, but with all these problems with the company, I just couldn't find the time. My life was already difficult enough without a long and expensive divorce. When I met Janet, everything fell into place. She was beautiful, kind, and a good listener. She became my refuge. In the end, we fell in love with each other. Now I was curious. What about Kathy? What's her story? Kathy is a friend, that's all. Walker's secretary said you had fun with her too. Diane always sees the worst in people. She thought I was having sex with Kathy because I sent her flowers a couple of times. Come to think of it, I also asked her to order dinner for Kathy and me once or twice. The truth is, Kathy was having a hard time breaking up with her long-term lover. She was depressed, and I tried to show her it wasn't her fault. That's all. Anyway, he said, standing up abruptly, now you know the whole story of my life. The cops don't want me to leave before the trial, so I think I'll be here for a while. But once this is over, Janet and I plan to spend the rest of our lives soaking up the tropical sun somewhere. Take care, Stone. Those were his last words as he closed the door behind him. One thing I've learned in my business is there are no absolutes, no pure black and white. There are always more than 2 sides to every story. I looked again at the check with my name on it for $360,000. I still couldn't believe it. On the way home, I took it to my accountant. I told him to put $72,000 in my account and figure out how to keep as much of the rest as possible from Uncle Sam. Legally, of course. The next morning, I walked into Walker's outer office. Diane was no more pleased to see me than the last time. You're like a bad penny, Stone. I think he'll want to see me, dollface. I have something for him. The bleached blonde pressed the intercom button and told Walker I had something for him. Hell see you, she told me, pointing to his office door. I didn't sit down. I really didn't want to do this. If Walker was the fraud Richardson made him out to be, he didn't deserve what I was about to give him. Sometimes in my business, you have to do nasty things, and this was one of them. I took the envelope from my inside coat pocket and threw it on his desk. He read the company name on the front. What is this? Open it and find out. His facial expression seemed to mirror my own. 3.6 million, he almost shouted. Did you get it back? What about the rest? I get 10% as a search reward, remember? No, I don't remember that at all. Richardson was right. Walker was a snake in the grass. I thought you might say that, I told him. So here's a copy of the contract you signed when you first hired me. I threw the 3-page agreement on his desk. Okay, he replied, knowing I held all the aces. I suppose I should thank you. Don't worry, I told him. I was looking at a .38 the other day, but giving you this money is the most unpleasant thing I've done all week. When I got back to my office, I picked up the newspaper and read the police report on what happened at the lake house. It's time to tell your version, I thought. I borrowed a couple of chairs from the employment agency next door and called a small press conference in my office after lunch. Eloise was as cute as a kitten and looked at me with big eyes the whole time. Stacy and I never put any limits on each other. We were both free to do whatever we wanted with whoever we wanted. A week ago, I would have danced in the sheets with that little reporter, but suddenly it seemed wrong. Then I checked my bank balance online and smiled when I saw $72,000 in my account. I decided to take a chance and called one of the upscale restaurants in town to make a late evening reservation. Then I needed to make sure Stacy was available. When I told her where we were going, she said she had nothing to wear. I told her not to worry about it. I knew she still wore the same size as when we got married. I needed to go home and get ready, but first, I had to make a couple of stops. I rang Stacy's doorbell at 6:30, giving her time to finish getting ready. She screamed when she saw the dress. "Jack, it's beautiful. How can you afford it? It must have cost a fortune. What did you do, rob a bank?" "No, I was just finally able to collect a debt. Now hurry up and put it on. We have less than an hour." Throughout dinner, Stacy questioned me about the debt I mentioned. I just told her she'd have to wait for the morning paper. I knew reporters would hype the story to sell more newspapers. Letting her read about it would help me stay humble, I told myself with a small smile. We ate the last bites of our desserts and were about to leave, finishing our coffee, when I decided it was time. "Oh, I almost forgot," I said, reaching into my jacket pocket. When she saw the Tiffany ring box, she screamed so loudly the entire restaurant looked over. Tears immediately flowed from her gorgeous eyes as she tried to slide the large pear-shaped diamond onto her finger. She raised her hand for everyone to see. "We're engaged!" she shouted. We heard shouts of congratulations followed by applause from both patrons and staff. I had a good accountant. I knew he would invest my money wisely, allowing me to be more selective in the clients and cases I took on. Life with Stacy has been absolutely wonderful, and I look forward to a wonderful future together. Life with Stacy had been a whirlwind of bliss and excitement. We decided to have a small, intimate wedding on a beach in the Caribbean. The ceremony was simple, just us, a few close friends, and a gentle ocean breeze. Stacy looked radiant in her white dress, and as we exchanged vows, I knew that this time things would be different. After the wedding, we settled into a comfortable routine. I continued my work as a private investigator, but I took fewer cases and made sure to spend more time with Stacy. We bought a cozy house in a quiet neighborhood, and I turned one of the rooms into a home office. This allowed me to work from home more often and be there for Stacy whenever she needed me. One afternoon, while I was working on a new case, Stacy walked into my office with a concerned look on her face. "Jack, there's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, putting down the file I was reading. I think someone is following me," she said, her eyes wide with fear. "Following you? Are you sure?" I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "Yes, I'm sure. It's happened a few times now. I see the same car parked outside when I leave the house, and I think someone was watching me at the grocery store yesterday," she explained. I stood up and walked over to her, wrapping my arms around her shoulders. "Don't worry, Stace. I'll find out who's doing this and put a stop to it." That evening, I set up a few surveillance cameras around the house and installed a tracking device on Stacy's car. I wanted to make sure I had eyes on her at all times, and I planned to follow her discreetly the next day to see if I could spot the stalker. The following morning, Stacy left for work as usual. I followed a few cars behind, keeping a close eye on the traffic around her. After a few minutes, I noticed a black SUV that seemed to be tailing her. I made a note of the license plate and continued to follow at a safe distance. When Stacy arrived at her office, the SUV parked a few spaces away. I watched as a man in his late 30s got out of the car and walked toward the building. He didn't enter, though. He just stood there, watching her from a distance. I decided to confront him. I got out of my car and approached him, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. "Excuse me, can I help you with something?" I asked, standing a few feet away from him. He looked surprised for a moment, then quickly composed himself. "No, I'm just waiting for someone," he replied a little too quickly. "Really? Because it looks like you've been following my wife," I said, my tone firm. He hesitated, then smirked. "Your wife? I think you're mistaken, buddy." "Am I? Because I've been watching you and I know you've been following her," I said, taking a step closer. His smirk disappeared and he took a step back. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Too late for that. You tell me who you are and why you're following my wife, or things are going to get ugly," I warned. He sighed, realizing he was caught. "Fine. My name is Mark, and I've been hired to keep an eye on her." "Hired by who?" I demanded. "I can't tell you that. I was just following orders," he said, looking nervous. "Well, you're going to tell me, or we're going to have a big problem," I said, pulling out my phone and pretending to call the police. Okay, it was John Miller. He hired me to keep an eye on her after you guys got married. He was worried she might be in danger because of your line of work," Mark confessed. John Miller. The name made my blood boil. He had caused enough trouble already, and now he was spying on my wife? "Listen, you go back to Miller and tell him to back off. If I see you or anyone else following my wife again, there will be serious consequences," I warned. Mark nodded, clearly scared. "I got it. I'll tell him." I watched as he got back into his SUV and drove away. I called Stacy and told her what had happened, reassuring her that everything was under control. But I couldn't shake the feeling of anger and frustration. Miller had crossed a line and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. That evening I sat down with Stacy and explained everything. She was understandably upset, but she trusted me to handle the situation. I made a few calls and found out that Miller was living in a secluded mansion outside of town. It was time to pay him a visit. The next morning I drove out to Miller's mansion. The place was heavily guarded, but I had a plan. I parked a few blocks away and made my way through the woods surrounding the property. As I approached the house, I saw Miller sitting on the porch, sipping a drink. I stepped out of the shadows and called out to him, "Miller, we need to talk." He looked up, surprised to see me. "Stone, what the hell are you doing here?" "I'm here to tell you to back off. I know you've been spying on my wife and it needs to stop now," I said, walking up to the porch. Miller stood up, his face contorted with anger. "I was just trying to protect her, Stone. You have a lot of enemies and I didn't want her to get hurt." "That's not your call to make. Stacy is my wife and it's my job to protect her. If you have a problem with that, we can settle it right now," I said, clenching my fists. Miller took a step back, realizing he was outmatched. "Fine, I'll call off the surveillance, but if anything happens to her, it's on you." "Nothing will happen to her, just stay out of our lives," I said, turning to leave. As I walked away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Miller had finally backed down, and Stacy and I could move on with our lives. But I knew this wasn't the end. There would always be challenges, always be threats. But as long as I had Stacy by my side, I knew we could face anything together. A few months later, life had returned to a semblance of normalcy. I continued to take on cases, but I made sure to balance work and home life. Stacy and I spent our weekends exploring new places, going on little adventures, and just enjoying each other's company. One day, while we were out hiking in the mountains, my phone rang. It was an old friend and colleague, Sam, who ran his own PI firm in another state. "Jack, I need your help," he said, his voice urgent. "What's going on, Sam?" I asked, stepping away from Stacy to take the call. "I've got a case that VJTIM's bigger than anything I've handled before. It involves some high-profile clients, and I need someone I can trust to back me up," he explained. I hesitated. "Sam, you know I'm trying to take fewer cases these days." "I know, but this is important." It could expose a major corruption ring, and I can't do it alone, he pleaded. I looked over at Stacy, who was admiring the view from a nearby rock. She caught my eye and smiled, giving me a look that said she understood. "Okay, Sam, I'll help you out, but you owe me one," I said, agreeing to take on the case. "Thanks, Jack. I knew I could count on you. I'll send you all the details," he said, relief evident in his voice. As I hung up the phone, I walked back to Stacy and took her hand. "I need to help a friend with a case. It might take me away for a bit, but I promise I'll make it up to you." She squeezed my hand and nodded. "I understand, Jack. Just be careful, okay?" "I will," I promised, leaning in to kiss her. Over the next few weeks, Sam and I worked tirelessly on the case. It involved a complex web of corruption, bribery, and illegal activities that reached into the highest levels of government and business. We uncovered evidence that implicated several powerful individuals, and as we dug deeper, the danger increased. There were moments when I feared for my safety and Stacy's, but I knew I couldn't back down. The truth needed to be exposed and justice had to be served. Finally, after months of investigation, we had enough evidence to take to the authorities. Sam and I presented our findings to a federal prosecutor who was shocked by the extent of the corruption. She assured us that she would pursue the case vigorously and that those responsible would be held accountable. With the case in the hands of the authorities, I returned home to Stacy. I had missed her terribly and couldn't wait to spend some quality time together. We decided to take a long overdue vacation, just the two of us, to a quiet cabin in the mountains. As we sat by the fireplace one evening, sipping wine and enjoying the warmth of the fire, Stacy looked at me and smiled. "You know, Jack, despite everything, I'm glad we found our way back to each other," she said softly. "Me too, Stace. I can't imagine my life without you," I replied, taking her hand in mine. We spent the rest of the evening talking, laughing, and reminiscing about old times. It was a perfect moment, a reminder of why we had fallen in love in the first place. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and just when things seemed perfect, another challenge arose. One evening, as we were returning from a walk, we found a note pinned to our front door. It was a warning, telling me to back off the case I had just finished working on with Sam. I crumpled the note in my hand, anger boiling inside me. "They don't know when to quit, do they?" I muttered. Stacy looked worried. "What does it mean, Jack? Are we in danger?" "Don't worry, Stace, I'll take care of it," I said, trying to reassure her. I knew I needed to be vigilant. The corruption case had ruffled some powerful feathers, and now it seemed they were coming after me. I decided to reach out to my contacts in law enforcement and let them know about the threat. They assured me they would provide extra security and keep an eye on things. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly returned to normal. The threat seemed to have subsided, but I remained cautious. Stacy and I continued to enjoy our time together, making the most of every moment. One afternoon, as we were sitting on the porch enjoying the sunset, Stacy turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Jack, have you ever thought about retiring?" she asked. "Retiring? I don't know, Stace. I've been doing this for so long I can't imagine doing anything else," I replied. "I know, but maybe it's time to think about the future. We've been through a lot, and I don't want to spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders," she said softly. I thought about her words. She was right. We had been through a lot, and maybe it was time to consider a new chapter in our lives. "You're right, Stacy. Maybe it is time to think about the future. But if I retire, what would I do with myself?" I asked with a chuckle. She smiled. "We could travel, explore new places, and just enjoy life. We deserve it, Jack." I took her hand and nodded. "You know what? That sounds like a great idea. Let's do it." And so we began to make plans for a new chapter in our lives. We sold the house, bought an RV, and hit the road. We traveled across the country, visiting national parks, small towns, and everything in between. It was an adventure, and it was exactly what we needed. We found happiness in the simple things, in each other's company, and in the freedom to explore the world at our own pace. I still took on the occasional case, but only the ones that intrigued me or helped a friend in need. One evening, as we sat by a campfire under a starlit sky, Stacy leaned her head on my shoulder and sighed contentedly. "Jack, this is perfect. I couldn't ask for anything more," she said. I wrapped my arm around her and kissed her forehead. "Me neither, Stace. This is exactly where I want to be. With you, always." And so we continued our journey together, finding joy in every moment and cherishing the love that had brought us back together. Life was an adventure, and as long as we had each other, we knew we could face anything that came our way. Thanks for watching today's episode of Deceived Husbands. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more unbelievable tales. And remember, no matter how tough life gets, there's always a way to move forward. Stay strong, stay smart, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.